Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the GreenRoc Mining PLC investor presentation. Throughout this recorded presentation, investors will be in listen-only mode. Questions are encouraged. They can be submitted at any time via the Q&A tab that's just situated on the right-hand corner of your screen. Please just simply type in your questions and press send. The company may not be in a position to answer every question it receives during the meeting itself. However, the company will review all questions submitted today and publish responses where it is appropriate to do so, and these will be available via your Investor Meet company dashboard. Before we begin, if I may, I would like to submit the following poll, and I would now like to hand you over to CEO Stefan Bernstein. Good afternoon, sir.
Thank you, and good afternoon, everyone. I last held an IMC presentation a couple of months ago. There's happened a few things since then. I know there's some, I don't know, but I assume there might be some newcomers. So there will be a few slides, of course, that are a repetition of some of the material I presented last. But there are also some significant news that you will see in a moment. So GreenRoc Mining is a mining company concentrating on critical raw materials for the energy transition, and we are active in Greenland. The main project we are developing is the Amitok graphite deposit towards mining. It's situated in southern Greenland, and it has a very significant resource that we were able to increase in size to 23 million tons at more than 20% graphite as of January this year, based on the 2 years of drilling. So let me get on to the presentation here. So couple of disclaimer slides, and then on to one slide that's just giving you a bit of information about the company. This presentation is available after the presentation here. The slide deck is available, so some of the information you can always go back and read. So this is the agenda for today. I'll be speaking first a little bit about graphite, why it is important, and why we are so excited about our project in South Greenland because of the importance of graphite. And then I get on to the details of the graphite deposit at Amitok, and then on to some news about the processing of the graphite and the graphite ore from Greenland, some test work we are doing. And there are some very significant news from the European Union, and then I will end with the roadmap towards production, and then take questions afterwards. So first of all, graphite is immensely important because they constitute a very major component of EV batteries. More than a fifth of the weight of an EV battery is composed of graphite. It makes the anode in the batteries. There's a whole range of different battery technologies. Nearly all of them use graphite, whether then they use lithium or cobalt or nickel or iron phosphate. They all use graphite as anode material. And so an average car on the street today will be carrying about 60, 70, 80 kilograms of high purity spherical graphite. Now that graphite is the one you can see on the panel here in the lower part of the slide, rounded spheres of graphite, and that's not the way graphite comes by nature. Nature makes it like flakes, so it has to be processed, reshaped, and purified, and that's a process that reshaping of graphite is a process that today only takes place in China. So that means that all the gigafactories that are today being built or are already in production in Europe, for instance, and in North America and elsewhere, they are sourcing all their graphite from China. China themselves may not mine all the graphite. They are the biggest world producer of graphite. About 2/3 of world's production of graphite comes from China. But That's not nearly enough for the Chinese processing industry, so they've actually been a net importer of graphite over the past 3 or 4 years. Good. A very important aspect of graphite in terms of EV batteries is also that presently there's no easy way to recycle graphite from these EV batteries. There's been a lot of actions towards recycle other commodities in the batteries, such as lithium, of course, but also cobalt, nickel, and copper. Graphite is the one component that is not readily recyclable. It ends up in the kind of a bucket waste called black mass, which mostly consists of graphite, and you can. Some Chinese companies have actually been able to extract the graphite from there, but it's not of a quality that can then be reshaped into spherical graphite. So to the extent that it is recycled today, it's only going into the steel industry. So there's no doubt that in the years to come here, there will be a huge demand for graphite, also because it's not coming back into the cycle. So just in Europe, there is about 40 gigafactories that will be in production by 2030. About 20 of them are in production today, or will be in production by 2030. 2023. And that means that there will be a vast increase in demand for graphite, coming from about 170,000 tons last year to more than 1 million, between 1 and 2 million tons of graphite by 2030. So the question is, of course, where is that graphite going to come from? Benchmark Mineral Intelligence have estimated that by 2035 there'll be a demand of nearly 100 new average-size graphite mines in the world to make up for that need. Yes, and also in this slide you can see a price forecast for graphite, synthetic graphite in red, and in dark blue is the natural flake graphite. It comes into deficit in 23, remains in deficit until 27, when it goes into very serious deficit, including also synthetic graphite. Okay, so huge need for graphite. The energy transition is simply not going to take place without graphite. So we have a good candidate for that graphite in South Greenland. Amitok deposit is situated down here in the southern tip of Greenland. I'll get on to the aspects of the graphite deposit in a moment, just saying that the supply chain from the mine towards the battery gigafactory is so that is illustrated here. There's a mining where you extract the graphite ore from the ground, then there's a concentration that produces a graphite concentrate. Then there's spheronization, micronization, spheronization, purification, and then coating, and then you get on to producing your anode and eventually the battery to put in the Tesla or Hyundai or whatever car you're driving. So our business in GreenRoc is to have a graphite production from our mine in Greenland. This is this part here, and then we'll transport the graphite concentrate onto a spheronization plant in most likely Northern Europe. Could be UK, could be in an EU country, but it could also be North America, or both, because as you will see in a moment, Greenland is a very conveniently located midway between North America and Europe. So what do we have at Amitok? Well, it's a very significant deposit. As said, more than 23 million tons, and the deposit is situated on the southern tip of this long, 20-kilometer long island, sitting in the middle of a large fjord system. It's about 20 kilometers north of Nanortalik town, which is down here. And it was a mine 100 years ago, a small mine closed in 1922 due to falling graphite prices on the world market. And then it was lying dormant for nearly 100 years until GreenRoc Mining started working at it again, first testing the quality of the graphite, which turns out to be very good, and then drilled it in 2021 and then 22. And every year expanding the resource. I should also just mention here, you see the licenses, they are all held by GreenRoc Mining. And with red, you see other occurrences of graphite deposits. We have tested several of these, not drilled yet, but they've been tested. And they are returning grades between 20 and 30% graphite, so world-class grades. So this is really opening a whole new graphite district here of really high significance and potential. So the 2 drilling operations we've had shows that we have more than 23 million tons of graphite at around 20%, a bit higher than 20% graphite. That's really putting us up in the top league of projects under development worldwide today. This is the orange bars showing our location here. And then we are, another aspect of this is that with nearly 5 million tons of graphite in ground here, we can calculate the value per ton of graphite in ground. Expressed as the market cap in US dollar per ton of contained graphite in the resource, just to give you an impression of what are we valued at the market today. And it shows you with these green bars that we are significantly undervalued compared to all of the peers in this diagram. Which means, in turn, of course, there's certainly a potential for a very significant growth. So investment in GreenRoc shares on this basis here looks like it's a very good one. Okay, so a little bit more about the graphite deposit at Amitok. We are in the right-hand side panel. We can see an image of the graphite layers looking from the west towards the east. The southern tip of Amitok Island is here. And then you see 2 graphite layers, the upper graphite layer in yellow, lower graphite layer in red, showing how consistent they are in thicknesses and lateral extent. Very simple geometries also make it simple to mine these ore bodies, and it goes up to more than 20 meters of thickness with more than 20% graphite all across those thicknesses. So these are the expressions of the ore bodies as we know today, based on drilling in 21 and 22. Significantly here, the deposits are open towards the north, towards me here to the west, and then towards the south. So the resource estimates that I just showed you are a conservative minimum. Right. I will get on here, and we've done a series of test work on our graphite ore. We've taken ore from the low graphite layer and showed that with relatively simple kind of conventional flotation, we can achieve a concentrate of better than 96%, which is a very high grade concentrate. And test work, again, conducted by Pro Graphite in Germany, shows that we can micronize and spherinize this graphite into a very high quality spheronized graphite product, which is exactly of the type that is used for anode in the car batteries. Also, the specifications of these, this is a photomicrograph from a scanning electron microscope of spheronized from the Amitok deposit. And the specifications of these of the spheronized graphite meets all the requirements from the battery industry. Now, so that concerns the actual physical parameters of the spheronized graphite. Then there are also some requirements in terms of purity. They need to be better. Spherical graphite needs to be higher than 99.95%. And we've shown that we can achieve this by the traditional hydrofluoric leaching. But also we have conducted test work now showing that sodium hydroxide leaching achieves equally good result, which is certainly preferable. It's less expensive. It's much milder. It's corrosive, yes, but it's much, much nicer substance to handle than hydrofluoric acid. So that's certainly a great advantage. Currently, we have some electrochemical testing ongoing so that the remaining specifications are being met, or requirements are being met for the spherical graphite from Amitok. I also like to mention that we are currently discussing with FL Smith about the development of or optimizing a new flotation unit that they have developed recently. FL Smith is the world's largest supplier of mineral processing equipment. It's actually a Danish company, but it has offices and labs and factories all over the world. This unit has been tested on copper and molybdenum ore, but there's no reason why it shouldn't be running really well also on graphite ore. But of course, that needs to be tested and also needs to be calibrated towards graphite ore. But it really is promising, showing some very significant reductions in both energy consumption, but certainly, which is also very important for us at Amitok, because it is constrained space at Amitok, as you could see from the slides. This comes with a reduction in footprint of the flotation plant by a factor of 2, so half of the footprint. So the energy savings, of course, also, and increased throughput. So this is very promising. Also like to touch on the possibility of supplying CO2 neutral energy for the production of graphite concentrated at Amitok. There's a project nearby at Dasio currently under development by the Green government. Not the plant itself is not under development, but there are plans to set up such a hydropower plant. And we are presently in discussion with the company that has the concession or the license to build hydropower plants in South Greenland, about the possibilities of setting such a plant up. This is not like a huge power plant, so investments are accordingly lower, but it should supply sufficient power to run the mine. So the production we are looking at Amitok is about 400,000 tons of ore per year that will be mining. Could be higher, but this is like what we are based on our development work on. There's certainly room for increasing this to maybe double. But again, as I said, this is a good starting plan. So at about 20% graphite, this is going to be yielding about 80,000 tons of graphite concentrate, which in turn will then yield about 50%, 50,000 tons of spherical graphite per year. And we have a series of other companies developing graphite projects in Europe at the moment. Not a lot, but there's a small handful in Scandinavia. Scotland is a producing mine in Norway with a small production, about 10,000 tons per year, perhaps with a potential to increase that to about 15,000 tons. Then there are 3 more, 2 in Sweden and 1 in Finland, at various stages of development. The furthest along that is Vittangi, Talgas Vittangi, and then there's Voxna and Autolampi. The 2 last are not yet near production. Vittangi is probably a bit closer. If all of these projects, including Amitok, come into production, then by 2030 we'll be producing about 300,000 tons, or a little less than 300,000 tons of graphite per year. That should be then compared to the demand by 2030 by just the European gigafactories of more than 1 million tons of graphite. So there's room for everyone here. The more the better, so to speak, to make the energy transition actually viable and happening. Good. I mentioned briefly the geographical location. Here's Amitok, midway between North America and Europe. 7 days of shipping about to eastern seaboard US, 4 or 5 days to northern Europe. Compare that to about 40 days from China to Europe, or 30 days from South America. And also Greenland, southern Greenland has a fairly well-developed infrastructure with harbors and heliports and airports taking bigger planes. The slide below here shows the conditions in January. I forgot to mention this at the start of the presentation, where you saw that nice fjord. That is actually the view from the Amitok deposit, showing the situation in the summer. This is taken in January 23 this year, showing the absence of ice in the fjord. So the fjord never freezes solid here. There's a bit of ice now, actually, as we speak, because ice comes in from the east, but that clears off in a few days. So you can depend on being able to ship here year-round. So onto the EU scene, very important step forward towards securing the supply chains of your raw materials in Europe. Happened recently. For us, it was manifested by a letter of support that we received from the European Raw Materials Alliance back in February. I talked a bit about that last time. I think it's a very important piece of document. There's some important statements here also, and it really puts us in a position where we can, in due time, be designated a strategic project. And what is a strategic project? That is something that is very important because the European Commission announced the Critical Raw Materials Act back in March this year to secure the supply chains of strategic raw materials. First of all, natural graphite is on this list of strategic raw materials. And as you can see, there are, I underlined a few things here. The strategic raw materials are crucial to technologies important to Europe's green energy transition. And it sets clear benchmarks for domestic capacities along these materials. And it should result in that designation of strategic projects that would then benefit from support for finance and shorter permitting timeframes. So we can see here that they put some key actions points up here, namely that by 2030 we should have at least 10% of the annual consumption being covered by EU domestic production, and at least 40% should be covered by EU processing, 40% of the consumption. Presently, this is zero, and for graphite and for the extraction is a few percent. And then 15% consumption for recycling. That's out of the question for graphite, as I just mentioned, for the reasons given in the slide. So it's and then also says no more than 65% of the annual consumption can come from one single country. Presently, 100% comes from China. So some action is needed here clearly, which is also why the EIT Raw Materials announced a European call for action with regards to materials for energy storage and conversion as a few days ago. I was at the meeting in the Raw Materials Summit meeting in Brussels last week, where this was announced. They have some action points that are particularly relevant for GREENROC. Namely that there should be put in some facilities and a fund to support all stages of exploration to pre-feasibility studies, definitive feasibility studies and operations. And also that funding should be, in terms of like grants, equity funding, loan guarantees, should be made available to junior mining companies for early stage high risk projects that have not yet reached PFS. Very important initiatives here that eventually would become relevant for us, being already now announced for support for the EIT Raw Materials.
Stefan, hi. If I may just jump back in there, we seem to be getting a bit of feedback from your microphone. If it's okay with you, sir, I've sent you a dial-in option, and that will be in your email. Is it okay if you could just dial in on that?
It's a dial-in for, should I close this presentation?
Yep, that will be in your email. It's just a phone number, and if you could dial in, that would be great, just to ensure your audio. Apologies, ladies and gentlemen, for any inconvenience caused here. Please just do bear with us while we dial Stefan in. Thank you.
So I just need to understand, should I close the presentation and then you just want me to dial in via a telephone?
Yeah. Hi, Stefan. Just feel free to leave this open. Just leave this open, and if you could just dial in on your phone, that would be great. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be just recommencing shortly. Please do just bear with us. Thank you.
Hello.
Hi, Stefan. Thank you very much for doing that. We can now hear you clearly.
Okay, that's good. I'm sorry about the other thing. I don't know what happened. Okay. Should I go back or should I just continue where I stopped?
Please feel free to continue, sir.
Okay. So hopefully everybody can hear me now. Sorry about this pause. what I said here was that at Brussels last week at the EIT Raw Materials Summit was released this European call for action on the materials for energy storage and conversion, which I believe is very, very important for us because it has several points that are important or relevant to GreenRoc Mining. It suggests that they set up a fund to support all project stages from exploration to feasibility study and operations. And particularly here, grants, equity funding, loan guarantees should be made available to junior mining companies for early stage high risk projects that have not yet reached PFS. I think this is very, very important for us because a lot of times when I've been talking to institutional investors, they've been saying, well, we don't come back when you have PFS or DFS. And that's kind of very importantly here, to keep momentum, we need to have capital obviously available in order to drive the project forward at these stages where we are at the moment. I also like to emphasize here the recommendation that the EU Commission looks upon the sustainability in mining to be considered a sustainable investment object. This is so that it fits a sustainable finance taxonomy. That is another important aspect because when we've been talking to pension funds, for instance, they say, well, mining, yeah, your project looks great and we can see it's important, but just because we have these different strategic decisions being made, we can only follow those that fit the sustainability finance taxonomy. So if mining with these raw materials here in Europe can be filling the requirements for fitting that taxonomy, that would be extremely helpful. So very, very important new document here. There's also in that European call for action, which I recommend that you have a look at if you're interested in these matters, then there are about 50 projects, investment cases, they are named across Europe. Only 2 of them concerns graphite, and one of them is us, GreenRoc Mining. So again, we have strong expectations that once the strategic projects are being defined, ready for investments from the EU funds, then we'll be on that list. Some other interesting numbers coming out of that call for action. This looks at the various important commodities for the energy transition. Lithium, nickel, cobalt, graphite, rare earth elements, silicon, copper, and zinc. And there are some, I just took out graphite here to show some of the metrics that are portrayed here, looking at the situation 2020 and 2030, with the global demand increasing by 5 times and global mine production at 2030, and then the potential for the European demand being fulfilled by European production. And as you can see here, only about 20% of the need in Europe by 2030 is going to be filled by projects presently being developed in Europe. So another important aspect or information to draw out of this study is that the global demand for battery raw materials by 2030, in just 7 years compared to the world production in 2020, increased by some factors. And interestingly, there's been a lot of talk about cobalt and nickel, certainly also rare earth elements and silica, and of course lithium, not so much graphite. Well, it's interesting actually to look at these numbers here because the much talked about rare earth elements is only 1.4 times higher global need compared to 2020 production. For clean silicon, for solar panels and so forth is 1.3, copper 1.2, zinc 1.4, then cobalt and nickel up around 2. But then look at graphite here, 5.3 times demand compared to production by 2020, and then of course lithium up at 13.5. So graphite is certainly in a league of its own, along with lithium amongst critical raw materials where the supply chain certainly is not secured yet. Okay, and then it's importantly also that there's a EU Greenland partnership as soon to be announced, which was declared by Thomas Laursen, representative of the Greenland government at the EIT Raw Materials Summit last week, which means also that our project, because it is situated in Greenland, is then becoming a potential partnership country, and therefore it qualifies for EU funding. Okay, I think I just want to stress here that Greenland is a very well-regulated and mining-friendly jurisdiction. I know there's been some talking about restrictions in mining in Greenland, but that's only pertaining to exploitation of uranium. With regard to any other commodities, there's a lot of support from the Greenland government as well as the local communities towards mining, as long as, of course, that you are acting in a proper fashion, being good corporate citizens and so forth. We are also in a situation with the Greenland legislation that the social and environmental impact assessments are all integrated into the mining law. So it's a much more streamlined process. Of course, there's a lot of samples and surveys and hearings you have to do, but that's fine. It's all there's a clear roadmap towards the exploitation permitting. So, and it's a one-door policy, so we're only dealing with one governmental body here. Right, I'll just get on to the final slide concerning the roadmap towards production here. There are two really we are undertaking at the moment. The top one is towards the production at Amitok. We're looking at this year, the preliminary economic assessment. I'll get on to that in a second. Then the environmental and social impact assessment that we are currently undertaking, leading on to the PFS next year and exploitation permitting and then construction and so forth. And parallel with this, we are developing some test work on samples towards showing the quality of the spheronized graphite that we can produce, and then do a PFS in terms of setting up such a pilot plant and a full production plant of spheronized graphite for the anode industry. I just want to mention a very important piece of work that we are currently undertaking, a preliminary economic assessment, which is going to take all the variables into account and calculating an NPV and looking at the economic viability of the project. This is going to be delivered by September 23 by SLR, a consultancy company. Right. So thank you very much for attending. I'm sorry about the hiccup here with the sounding. I hope you got most of what I said. And I will now turn on to the questions.
Stefan, that's great. And thank you very much indeed for your presentation this afternoon. Ladies and gentlemen, please do continue to submit your questions just by using the Q&A tab that's situated on the top right-hand corner of your screen. But just while the team take a few moments to review those questions that were submitted already, I would like to remind you that a recording of this presentation, along with a copy of the slides and the published Q&A, can be accessed via your investor dashboard. Stefan, we did receive a number of pre-submitted questions ahead of today's event. And as you can see there in the Q&A tab, we've also received a number of questions throughout your presentation this afternoon as well. So firstly, thank you to all of those on the call for taking the time to submit their questions. And Stefan, if I may just hand back to you to respond to those where it's appropriate to do so, and then I'll pick up from you at the end. Thank you.
Yes. So I will get on directly. Most of the time, so I'm not going to hold you up too long. So first of all, there's a question here. Why and what is the reason of the delayed news on the tulip black sands? Has GREENROC given up on other projects, and have any motor vehicle companies been in contact personally with you, Stefan? So first of all, no, we have not given up other projects. Obviously, we're doing a bit of work, desktop work on a lot of data that is concerning the iron ore project. And then, as I have explained before, there's been a mistake from IC mineral sands experts in Australia with regard to the analysis of the samples that we collected way back in 2021. And now that is now being mended by taking conducting some further test work on some of the samples, where we're looking at basically they discarded the coarser fractions and therefore a considerable mass of ilmenite during the analysis, and now they are doing some reanalysis of the material and the coarser grain fractions, so we have a more complete picture of the resource. So I'll see if this helps. Is this any better? I hope so. No, I can't read my questions here. Okay. Then have any motor vehicle company? Yes, they have. I've been talking to, I put it here on my list, I look here, between 7 and 8 companies I've been talking to. And it's both the automakers, and then it's the battery makers, and then the anode producers. So it's a mix of different companies that I've been talking to. So certainly we just haven't yet reached any agreement with any one of them, but it's something that we are currently doing a lot of work on. So next question here is, can you show a graph of 2023 graphite prices? Many says that they will rise, and I can say that yes, the predictions are that they will rise. They haven't risen yet too much. In fact, they've been falling very recently here. So this is the spherical. No, let's look at this here. Graphite flake. You can see here from May 20 to May 23. This is out of a webinar held by Fast Market a couple of days ago. And you can see it peaked around last summer, and then it's been falling a bit here over the past months. And similarly, we see more, well, not particularly more significant. You have to watch the y-axis here, but it's there's been a significant fall in spherical graphite prices also. However, as it says here, the outlook remains bullish, and the reason for the fall, I'd just like to say here, is that the EVs part of the sales of new vehicles made a very significant drop in 22 across all sectors, all geographical regions of the world. If you project the curves here from 2021 and up, it should be a lot higher than it is today. It is show signs of recovering, but and this is of course caused by the Russian invasion in Ukraine. So the price predictions we saw were basically prior to the invasion, and they have not been adjusted simply. But we now see a adjustment in graphite prices, of course. That's going to change again once the EV sales are picking up. So the graphite is going to go into deficit. This is Fastmarkets prediction. There was a slight oversupply in 22 caused by what I just referred to, and then by 23 this year it's going to go into mild deficit and then taking off into a more serious deficit by 24 and 25. This is a forecast of the prices. The baseline here takes the prices. If this is about $800-900 per ton, then it's going to go to about $1,400 per ton, up to nearly $1,500, whereas the high case here takes it up to about $2,000 per ton by 2033. Right, that pertains to another question. Let me just see here. Are you still on track for opening mine in 27? Yes, and I think I just mentioned what the key milestones are to watch out for. So the first one would be the PEA, which will be published in September. What are the EU? The EU are talking a good game on supporting critical minerals. Are they doing anything that is specifically supporting GREENROC? Well, we received this letter from the ERT Raw Materials Alliance, and as said, we presently speak to them. They are certainly aware of our project, and they're not missing any chance to make us, visible to the politicians when it comes to the battery raw materials. So I think we are quite confident that we will become a strategic project when the EU Critical Raw Materials Act has passed. Question 5, are you getting any interest from gigafactory owners in taking your product? And yes, we are. But again, I think I mentioned it before that presently what they're mostly worried about is lithium. So as long as they can still get the delivery from China, they are basically happy. That's of course going to change quite soon. I'm pretty sure. But in addition to this, as again coming back to EU Critical Raw Materials Act, once there's this minimum of 10% domestic production and 40% domestic processing of raw materials, then suddenly it's going to change for sure. Presently, they're just looking at where the materials are available. Question 6, will GREENROC be involved in processing of graphite? Where will this take place? Europe, USA, China, and what is the best for GREENROC investors? I firmly believe that the best for GREENROC investors is if we put up a vertical integrated production of spherical graphite from our mine in Greenland, in Europe, or in North America, or both places, with the money from EU or North America, US government or investors. Presently, we're not interested in making it in partnership with China. I think the whole point of making these initiatives here is to secure the supply chains in the future. So we're certainly looking at both Europe and the US. The US has better incentives for setting up production there. I think Europe is going to follow suit very soon. But actually, UK seems also to be on the edge of being able to supply some support for our part of the industry. And as we see very recently in the news, it looks like new battery factories may be established in the UK. So next question. How confident are you that the PEA will deliver positive results? That we won't have a negative NPV. Of course, that would be not very nice. But I think it's very, very I'm very, very confident it's going to be looking very positive. You can think of it as being, I just calculated if we were talking about a copper deposit, because graphite is kind of difficult because there aren't that many mines producing graphite, but copper is something that is quite abundant. So if we had a similar deposit, but just with copper in terms of value, then we'll be looking at same tonnage, 23 million tons. Well, our 20% graphite is going to translate into between 2 and 3, probably closer to 3% copper. That will put us on a chart with grade against all quantity, and these are just all European deposits in production today, or recently in production. We'll be sitting up here in the top handful of projects and or mines, and you can see that we'll be cutting about 500,000 equivalent, 500,000 tons of copper equivalent. That is a major mine, and that is actually of a size, particularly because it's open, that will make even bigger companies quite interested. So I'm pretty confident with the kind of grades that we have that it's going to be a very positive NPV. Showstopper risks at Amitog. Are there any? You know, I'm a very optimistic person, very positive thinking. Maybe that's why I can't really see any. But please tell me if you see some, and I'll be happy to look at if I overlooked anything. I can't really see what it would be. Main thing is access to capital. That's really the important thing now. I know that we'll be getting into production, but you know, the sooner the better. And so access to capital is making that happen. You mentioned that Amitog could be a graphite province rather than just one mine. If this was the case, what sort of tonnages are we looking at? What work program will be done in Nautilic Island, Amitog Valley Bed, and so forth? And is there a timeline for turning these from hopes into resources? Well, first of all, they're not hopes in a sense that we know they're there, and they have a lot of graphite with very rich mineralizations, between 20 and 30%, as mentioned. I'd say that they are. I can't say anything about the size of them, of course. Now they're not drilled, but I would say that in general they have a potential to be of the same size as Amitog. We haven't done any further work for them program. We're currently focusing everything on Amitog to bring that into production. Again, if we had abundant access to abundant capital, then certainly we will be drilling all of them. But now we have to be conserving our resources to progress the Amitog. Excuse me. And then question 10, how old are the host rocks at Amitog? What is the origin of the graphite, and when and how did it get deposited at Amitog? That's a great question. It's a very, very extraordinary deposit with such high grades all across the width of others, up to 20 meters thick. It's quite amazing. We've had a Italian master student looking at this, working with University of Bologna, University of Copenhagen, and done some really great work. It's part of a 1.8 billion year Catilician origin, so it's a mountain chain that was built nearly 2 billion years ago, so it's a very old deposit. It probably was formed from CO2-rich fluids that came up from the lower part of the crust by decomposition of mantle peridotites that was metamorphosed into serpentinite. So that's a little bit of a geological question and answer. So that's why it's so rich and so consistently great that these were fluid pathways once back in time, where vast amounts of fluid passed by and then deposited this very clean graphite. Thank you. I don't see any other questions, so I think I'll stop here.
Stefan, that's great.
And I just have one final comment, because nobody asked the question, which I think is very important, namely what other kind of technologies are there of batteries that will not be using graphite anodes. And there are, of course, sodium-ion batteries. We can see here, also again from Fast Market seminar webinar here the other day, that sodium-ion batteries, they are here in light blue. They are expected to come in a few years' time and then become a semi-important component in the battery industry in the early 2030s, but only to a maximum of about 10%. So all of these other technologies will be using graphite. Yes, that was the end of the questions.
Stefan, that's great. And thank you very much indeed for being so generous with your time there and addressing all of those questions that came in from investors this afternoon. And of course, if there are any further questions that do come through, we'll make these available to you immediately after the presentation has ended, just for you to review, to then add any additional responses, of course, where it's appropriate to do so. And we'll publish all those responses out on the Investor Meet Company platform. But Stefan, perhaps before redirecting those on the call to provide you with their feedback, which I know is particularly important to yourself and the company, if I could please just ask you for a few closing comments to wrap up with, that'd be great.
Yes, of course, and thank you everyone for attending this meeting. And I just point out to you that today Allenby Capital released a research note on GreenRoc Mining, with the headline that Amitsoq now progressing to mine development. So that'll be available on our website very soon, if it is not already available. In there, you can also read that there's a valuation of GreenRoc Mining at 31p. That compares really well to today's share price of a bit higher than 5p, which is already great compared to what it was not long ago. So it's definitely going in the right direction for us. And that is, of course, very pleasing for me to see the confidence that we have with our shareholders. And we are doing our best, of course, to press on with the development here at Amitsoq, so we can deliver graphite to the European battery industry, and of course have all our shareholders benefit from it. Thank you.
Stefan, that's great. And thank you once again for updating investors this afternoon. Could I please ask investors not to close this session, as you'll now be automatically redirected for the opportunity to provide your feedback in order that the management team can better understand your views and expectations. This won't take a few moments to complete, but I'm sure will be greatly valued by the company. On behalf of the management team of GreenRoc Mining PLC, we would like to thank you for attending today's presentation. That now concludes today's session, so good afternoon to you all.